Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend, a fantastic Thanksgiving break, and that you were able to enjoy all of the games over these past 3 days. And you know, on Thanksgiving, the NFL was very lackluster. Those two NFL matchups were blowouts. They featured teams that all had a losing record, left a lot to be desired. College football, Week 13, more than made up for the disappointments that we saw on Thanksgiving. Week 13 of college football, to me, was unbelievable. Upsets left and right, historic moments left and right. And like we always do, guys, right here at the Gridiron Expert, we are here to break down those moments. The biggest games, the biggest moments, the biggest performances. We're here to break all of those down today for you with our Week 13 recap. So before we get down to the games and the analysis, let's take a look at our big board like we always do. We do not have teams trending up or trending down this week. One reason is we're trying to save time. Again, timestamps for every game will be down in the description. We're trying to conserve a little bit of time on these recaps. They're running a little bit long. So we're going to do that. And a lot of the teams that we would have up here, we've already used before. So we're going to give it a little bit of a week off, hopefully jump back with it in Week 14. But as you can see, another successful week across the board. We're killing it with the money line. Killing it with the money line, 21-5 straight up in Week 13. Good for an 80.8%. Pretty dang good if you ask me. 204-58 overall. So we cracked 200 wins and we're still under 60 losses. And that is what we are very proud of. We are sitting, what is that now? 77.9%, almost 78% in 2020. And again, that's on pace for the best record we've ever had here at the Gridiron Expert. The key is always to hit 76%. We're about 2% above that. So we're looking great so far in this wild year. Against the spread, obviously a lot could have been better, but we're 4-5. It's the first time we've dipped below 500 in a week in 6 weeks. It's been about a month and a half since we've had a week like this, and really it wasn't all that bad. One game below 500, I'm convinced we would have been at least 500 had Virginia, Florida State not been canceled. That was one of our picks, but so it goes. COVID's been doing that a lot lately. So 4-5 this week, 64-56 overall, 53.3% overall on the year. Still one of the best marks in the country, and again, we're keeping our word. We said we'd finish at 53% or better by season's end. We're there now, and I can promise it will not just stay there, but it will continue to rise over these next few weeks and into the postseason. So a successful weekend across the board. Really can't complain. Really can't complain, and we're looking forward to continuing the success in Week 14. Let's go ahead and touch on the recap. Let's take a look at some of these games that we've encountered so far. 13 were postponed or canceled in Week 13. We saw 5 ranked teams lose, 3 of those in ranked versus ranked matchups, and one of those ranked teams that went down was number 17 Texas. And they lost at home in Austin to number 13 Iowa State. One of the best games of Week 13, one of the biggest games of Week 13, and we knew that going into it. Friday morning showdown, 11 a.m. kickoff. We knew this was huge for the Big 12 standings. If Iowa State wins, practically clinch themselves a spot in the Big 12 title game. If Texas wins, we see chaos among the Big 12 teams. We don't have chaos. We already have half of the Big 12 title confirmed. Iowa State is going to Arlington, pretty much. They have West Virginia left. The Cyclones went into Austin and beat the Longhorns 23-20. Huge win for Matt Campbell and his 13th ranked squad. A squad that I should believe should be in the top 10 when the committee releases their rankings on Tuesday. And you look at this game, Texas, the funny thing is they hit our keys to the game. If you go back and watch our Texas and Iowa State preview video, we said Texas, to win this game, they needed to start fast. The Longhorns did jump out to a 10-0 lead in this one. And they needed to hold Breece Hall, the star running back for Iowa State, needed to hold him to under 125 rushing yards. Under 125 rushing yards. They held him to 91. So Breece Hall's streak of 8 consecutive games with at least 100 rushing yards came to an end in Austin, yet Iowa State still got the win. And I think that, to me, shows how good this Iowa State team is. If Texas met our keys to the game and Iowa State still was able to come back, and win this game. That shows how good and how relentless this Cyclones program is. Because you look at this, Iowa State trailed the entire game. They trailed the entire game until Breece Hall punched it in from 3 yards out with 1:25 left. Do I see a little bit of symbolism there? We said under 125. He scored with 1:25 left. I don't know. Coincidence? Maybe. Who knows? But 1:25, Breece Hall scores, gets in the end zone. Iowa State takes the lead. And we said, Breece Hall was a key, but we said Brock Purdy was even a bigger key. How well would he play? Would he play like he did last week against Kansas State, or would he struggle? Maybe like he did against Baylor. And Brock Purdy lit it up in Austin. 312 yards and 1 touchdown. To me, he's getting hot. Back-to-back performances like that, unbelievable. Major reason for why Iowa State won this game. Their defense, a major reason why Iowa State won this game. The Cyclones are now 7-2. They play West Virginia in Ames next week. They should win that game. Even if they don't for some reason, they should still be going to the Big 12 title game. Their opponent to be determined, more than likely Oklahoma, a rematch. But for the first time in program history, Iowa State has defeated Oklahoma and Texas in the same season. They defeated the Sooners and the Longhorns in the same season. So you Cyclone fans, rejoice. You should rejoice. You should be excited because this is a big deal. Unbelievable performance down in Austin. They're thrilled. And Texas left searching for answers and many calling for Tom Herman's head down in Austin. Might be time to move on from Tom Herman. But an unbelievable win, and now we have clarity in the Big 12. Sticking on the Friday games, let's go over to Chapel Hill, where number 2 Notre Dame took down number 19 North Carolina 31-17. This game showed me again, and we picked Notre Dame, but this game showed me again why Notre Dame is the number 2 team in the country. And if you're still skeptical, if you still are a Notre Dame hater, I don't know what else I can tell you. Because Notre Dame went in there, and that defense held UNC to 298 yards. 87 of those were on the ground. Not a lot. Still Notre Dame showing why they have one of the best rushing defenses in the country. 298 yards, 87 rushing yards, and they held them to 17 points. Notre Dame shut out North Carolina in the second half. It was tied at 17-all going into halftime. Notre Dame outscored them 14-0 in the second half to get the win. And what impresses me even more, guys, is you say what you want about Notre Dame, but the defense played extremely well against this high-powered North Carolina offense led by Sam Howell, but their offense is just as good, and they're very, very efficient. 279 passing yards for Ian Book. 199 rushing yards for the Irish, of course, led by Kyron Williams. And you look at this. Look how efficient they are. Those numbers don't impress you. Look at their drives. They had a touchdown drive of 75 yards. A touchdown drive of 82 yards. A field goal drive of 61 yards. A touchdown drive of 97 yards. That was to take the 24-17 lead. And another touchdown drive of 89 yards that put them up 31-17. So every big drive for them came from at least 61 yards or more. Every touchdown drive came from at least 75 yards or more. And that is impressive. That is impressive. This Notre Dame team, they're just going to wear you down. They're going to be more physical than you. They're going to play smarter than you. They're going to take care of the ball better than you. They're going to wear you down. And this team, guys, is legit. I think they have Syracuse and Wake Forest left on their schedule. They're going to win both of those, no doubt in my mind. They're going to play Clemson more than likely in the ACC title game. And even if they lose that game, they absolutely deserve to be in the college football playoff because this may be the best Notre Dame team we have ever seen under Brian Kelly. Better than the 2012 National Championship team before they lost to Alabama. Better than that playoff squad we saw just a few years ago when they fell to Clemson. This team is legit. And I don't think I'm putting too much stock into this win in Chapel Hill because North Carolina is a solid team. And they're a good offensive team. Not many defenses can do what Notre Dame just did. And then Friday night, our last game for Friday, how about Oregon State? I mean, how about Oregon State making a statement in the Pac-12, a statement in the state of Oregon, taking down their rival, the 15th ranked Oregon Ducks, the favorite in the Pac-12 this year, taking them down 41-38. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better way to end Friday night in just terms of the game in general. Oregon led the Beavers 24-13 at halftime. But Oregon State outscored their rival 22-7 in the fourth quarter. And at the very end of the game, one of the wildest endings I've seen in a long time, backup quarterback for Oregon State, Chance Nolan, scored the game-winning touchdown on a quarterback sneak on 4th and goal. And really, to me, it was 4th and an inch. You look at where that ball was placed. The tip of the ball was practically on the goal line. Chance Nolan sneaking it in behind that offensive line on 4th and goal to give the Beavers that 41-38 victory. An unbelievable performance. And what's even better than that is not the great moment for Chance Nolan, even though Tristan Gebbia did most of the work. Let's keep that in mind. Not that, but how about Jermar Jefferson? If you didn't know this guy's name before this week, before this season, you better know it now. Jermar Jefferson, we've said it, is maybe the best. If he's not the best, he's certainly one of them. Running backs in the Pac-12, and he showed that on Friday night. 226 rushing yards against this Oregon defense. The most rushing yards ever by any player in the history of Oregon State. 226 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Oregon State had 532 yards of offense, and they've gotten the signature win of that Jonathan Smith era. By far the biggest win for them under Jonathan Smith. Maybe one of the biggest wins in program history, dare I say. Because this was a gutsy performance. It was an unbelievable performance. Jermar Jefferson's going to go down as an Oregon State legend. I think we knew that before this game, but we certainly know it now. And what this game does, guys, it gives Oregon State this obviously huge edge in the state of Oregon, not only with recruiting, but a confidence booster for a program that has struggled for so long. But what it also does is it eliminates any slim chance that the Pac-12 had of making the college football playoff. It was slim before this game was played. The committee made that clear, ranking Oregon all the way down at 15th. Oregon ran the table. I still don't think they would have made the Final Four. But this loss ensures that no team from the Pac-12 was getting into that Final Four. It was slim beforehand. Now it is impossible. Oregon State, unbelievable victory, a gutsy performance and victory. And really, I think one of the best games that I've seen in 2020. Let's go on to Saturday. Man, that's just 3 games on Friday. How about that? Not very often we get so many great Friday games as like an appetizer for the main event on Saturday. And we've got a couple key games we want to talk on here. And one that I just want to touch on briefly. It wasn't the marquee matchup we were hoping for. It wasn't the game that we thought it was going to be 5-6 weeks ago. But Penn State going into the big house, taking down Michigan 27-17. If you thought Jim Harbaugh was going to get fired last week, the week before, he definitely is going to get fired now. This was just the final nail in the coffin for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, losing at home to a winless Penn State squad while you yourself are struggling mightily. I really was surprised by the outcome of this game. With how bad Penn State has been playing, with as bad as Michigan has been playing, this was a pick-em, really. Neither team was ever favored, I think, by more than 2 points. And I just assumed, I'd go with Michigan. I picked them in the preseason. I stick with them now. They're at home. And from what I've seen, they've played just slightly better than the Nittany Lions. And that was not the case on Saturday. So Penn State clinching their first victory of 2020. They're now 1-5. Michigan falling to 2-4 with this loss. And Jim Harbaugh, go ahead and pack your bags. Don't worry about showing up next week because you still have Ohio State later in the year. Imagine how bad that's going to be. And you're going to be searching for another job very soon. No offense to the guy. I'm a huge fan of Harbaugh. Love his passion and intensity. But his time in Ann Arbor is done. Moving over to the MAC. Why are we talking MAC football? Well, because like Jermar Jefferson, a name you need to know now, you also need to know the name Jaret Patterson. We talked about him last year in that bowl game for Buffalo, taking down Charlotte, and how great Jaret Patterson was, not just in that game, but all year for the Bulls, as I believe they got their first bowl win in history. Well, Jaret Patterson on Saturday, no big deal. He just ran for 409 yards and 8 touchdowns. You heard that correctly. 409 yards by a running back and 8 rushing touchdowns by Jaret Patterson at Buffalo. And that was a big game. I mean, he saved his best performance for one of the biggest games of the year for the Bulls because it was a battle of unbeatens. Undefeated Kent State, their electric quarterback in Dustin Crum. And you look at Buffalo with Jaret Patterson, obviously. Battle of unbeatens in the MAC Eastern Division. The winner of this game possibly winning that division. and Buffalo got the job done behind Patterson. Kent State had no answer for him all day long, and the Bulls win 70-41 over the Golden Flashes. This felt like a type of game you'd see in midweek action, but they said, hey, we want to join in on that Saturday fun too. And Jaret Patterson, the Bulls, certainly provided that. Unbelievable performance. You need to know about Jaret Patterson. You need to know about Jamar Jefferson, two guys that should be playing in a bowl game here in a few weeks, and guys that are certainly going to be keys to their teams winning, possibly winning those bowl games. And another player that you might want to keep your eye on, if we get to see her again, Sarah Fuller. How about that, guys? History was made. We mentioned at the beginning of the video, was historical. Oregon State, big upset. Iowa State, a huge win in Austin. A bunch of these big facts and wins and victories and moments for these teams that were historical, either for the college football landscape or for their program as a whole. We saw history that was made in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday afternoon as Sarah Fuller, a women's soccer player for Vanderbilt, played kicker for the Commodores in their game against the Missouri Tigers. Sarah Fuller becoming the first woman to play in a Power 5 college football game. And say what you want. Criticize her if you want. I think it's ridiculous if you do. Because that is a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a very memorable thing to do. It's a historical thing to do. It takes some guts to do that. And Sarah Fuller, sure, Vanderbilt lost 41-0. She did not get to attempt a field goal. She did not get to attempt a PAT, but she did kick off once. The ball was recovered on the Missouri 35-yard line. So it went about, 30 yards, 30, 35 yards on the kickoff. Wasn't great, wasn't fantastic, but it counts. History was made in the SEC, in college football, in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday afternoon. Sarah Fuller, something that she will remember for a long time and what we as college football fans should remember for a very long time as well. Again, not much to talk about within the game, but that moment, seeing her line up for that kickoff, seeing her prep all week long and the encouragement she received from her Vanderbilt teammates and obviously analysts and players from around the country just shows how great this sport is, how great college football really is. Moving on to the SEC, staying in the SEC, this time we're actually going to talk more about the game. How about the Iron Bowl? 85th Iron Bowl between number 1 Alabama and number 22 Auburn. This game went as we expected. Alabama defeating the Tigers 42-13 without Nick Saban on the sideline. Steve Sarkisian serving as the interim head coach as Nick Saban tested positive for coronavirus. So he was not coaching this game, and I would say that Steve Sarkisian and the Crimson Tide did him justice and served him well during his time off, defeating their rival by 29 points. Mac Jones, you want to talk about a big performance. Mac Jones last year was just really starting his career as Alabama's quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa went down a few weeks before. Mac Jones was playing in his third career start. He had very little experience as quarterback for the Tide. And against Auburn, in a game that would have kept Alabama's playoff hopes alive, against Auburn, he threw two crucial interceptions that resulted in pick sixes. Alabama lost by 3. And we mentioned, going into this game, Mac Jones certainly would want revenge. Mac Jones would certainly want to redeem himself, and that's exactly what he did. Jones throwing for 302 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Tigers to go along with 0 interceptions. 0 interceptions after throwing 2 crucial ones last year. So Mac Jones continuing to show why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, continuing to show why he's a legitimate Heisman contender, getting redemption against Auburn, and he needs to thank his wide receiver, Devontae Smith, for some of that success. Devontae Smith, arguably the best wide receiver in the SEC. 7 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 of those 5 touchdowns thrown by Mac Jones. Devontae Smith scoring on a 66-yard touchdown and a 58-yard touchdown. I mean, golly, this guy. Extremely elusive, extremely fast, excellent route runner, and obviously Mac Jones' favorite target. Auburn only scored 1 touchdown in the game. It came with 4:39 left in the game on a rushing touchdown by Bo Nix. And Nix continuing to struggle on the road. I get it's against the number 1 team in the country. But Nix only throwing for 227 yards, 2 interceptions, and luckily at the end adding that rushing touchdown. But the road woes continue for Auburn. The road woes continue for Bo Nix, who is a completely different person at home than he is on the road. Alabama, though, remaining undefeated, flexing their muscles, without a doubt will remain the number one team in the country going into Week 14. Speaking of another top team, how about Clemson in the return of Trevor Lawrence? You know, we knew this was not going to be pretty for Pittsburgh. Tigers playing the Panthers in Death Valley 1 week after Florida State kind of shafted them. After 1 week after Florida State kind of, took a shot at them. If you remember, Clemson prepped all week, traveled all the way to Tallahassee, woke up ready to play the game against Florida State. The Seminoles canceled that game 3 hours prior to kickoff. The Clemson players were going down there ready to eat breakfast at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. kickoff, and Florida State said, "Oh, you have a positive COVID test. We don't want to play you. We're done." Well, that made Dabo Swinney very, very angry. Very, very angry. And in Trevor Lawrence's first game back, in what it had been 3 weeks, he came out and threw for 403 yards and 2 touchdowns. Clemson was leading 31-0 at the end of the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, the Tigers had 3 interceptions, were up 31-0, and ultimately beat the Panthers 52-17. We know Clemson's legit. We know they're a different team with Trevor Lawrence. We know they're going to be just fine in the coming years with DJ Uiagalelei, but Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, they're a different animal, and they are certainly college football playoff and national title contenders. 2 games left in our Week 13 recap. How about Big Ten action with Northwestern? If you recall, Northwestern last week took down Wisconsin, forced 5 turnovers. The Badgers had 5 turnovers against this Wildcats defense, and the Wildcats defeated the Badgers by 10 points, 17-7. It was a convincing victory in Evanston. They need 1 more win to win the Big Ten West. That's impressive enough as it is. But after that win against Wisconsin, the Wildcats jumped all the way up to number 8 in the country. They weren't just looking at a Big Ten title. They were looking at a possible playoff berth. They win out. Maybe they beat Ohio State or maybe Indiana now. We'll talk about that later in the week. Indiana now in the Big Ten title. Northwestern, a team that went 3-9 last year, could make the college football playoff. Take a lot, but it could have happened. Those playoff hopes are over now. Northwestern's playoff hopes are over now because they just lost to a Michigan State team who remains inconsistent. That's the funny thing to me. Michigan State was 1-3. They are now 2-3. And Northwestern, high off that win over Wisconsin, a number 8 team in the country, ridiculously good defense. Maybe have found themselves an offense now led by Peyton Ramsey, the Indiana transfer quarterback. They look good. They look sharp. They're ready to prove to the nation they aren't a fluke, and they proved to the nation that they were a fluke, losing to a Michigan State team that had, 14 turnovers coming into this game? 14 turnovers. It was basically, to me, Michigan State and Northwestern, the roles were reversed. Northwestern looked like Michigan State had all year long. Michigan State looked like Northwestern had all year long. The Spartans jumped out to a 17-0 lead in this one. 17-0 lead. The Wildcats battled all the way back, scored 20 unanswered to take a 20-17 lead. But the Spartans, team that was 1-3, again, been down on their luck. Blowout loss to Iowa. Bad loss to Rutgers in Week 1. Team that's been down their luck. They scored the final 12 points, including Matt Coughlin's 48-yard field goal with 3:35 remaining to take a 23-20 lead. Northwestern's last-ditch effort, classic hook and ladder play, didn't work out in their favor, and Michigan State recovered it in the end zone to win by 9. But that Matt Coughlin field goal, that was the key in this one. You look at the defensive numbers here. Michigan State, they forced 4 turnovers. Michigan State forced 4 turnovers on Northwestern, 2 of those being interceptions by Peyton Ramsey. Conversely, Michigan State only committed 1 turnover. Rocky Lombardi, for once, did a pretty dang good job of taking care of the football. This Michigan State defense held Northwestern's run game, one that's been fairly dominant all year long, held them to just 63 yards, an average of 1.7 yards per carry. Again, the roles were reversed. It looked like the other teams just suited up as each other. Northwestern suited up as Michigan State. Michigan State suited up as Northwestern. That's basically what it looked like. And yet here we are, the Spartans, Mel Tucker, 2 signature wins on his resume now. He just took down Michigan a few weeks ago, I know Michigan's nothing now, but at the time they were. Anytime you beat a rival, it's a big deal. And now he has a win over the 8th-ranked team in the country to his name. Northwestern's playoff hopes, however slim they may have been, are now over. They can still make the Big Ten championship game only because Wisconsin's now not eligible for it. They can still get there, but obviously that's a major disappointment for a Wildcats program, and I think this was one of the more shocking results of the weekend. In our final game, before we touch on some honorable mentions, and those will go by relatively quickly, Texas A&M, the 5th-ranked team in the country, facing off against LSU in College Station. If you remember, the last time these two teams played in College Station, it was that 7-overtime thriller, 74-72, in favor of the Aggies. And, I looked at this game. A&M wins that one. All right, they win that 7-overtime victory 2 years ago. Last year, LSU, with that ridiculously talented national title squad, got their revenge. They beat the Aggies 50-7 in Death Valley. So even though Texas A&M came into this game having not played in about 3 weeks, I expected the Aggies to run all over LSU. I expected them to take out some of their frustrations and anger on the Tigers after getting beat down so bad last year. Embarrassed, really, last year. Well, the Aggies looked very, very rusty. They did not look like the 5th-ranked team in the country. And I think the commentators on that game said it best. Certainly give LSU some credit for what they did. LSU had their opportunities, a missed field goal, a controversial touchdown that was overruled. I get that. I don't know how much of a difference that would have made. You give them those 10 points and it's still 20-17. But LSU had their chances. But they say give LSU some credit for hanging in there and doing what they did. Do we give them credit or do we say A&M was rusty? And they said it's a bit of both. But Texas A&M is still the 5th-ranked team in the country. They should have woken up and dominated this game. And they didn't, only defeating the Tigers 20-7. They did force 3 turnovers. They did have a pick 6, one of those turnovers resulting in a pick 6. A&M's defense did hold LSU to just 36 rushing yards. And yes, I know, the touchdown that LSU scored did not come until 38 seconds left remaining in the game. Bad beat. Very, very bad beat, as Texas A&M was a 14-point favorite in that one. But this offense for A&M, led by Kellen Mond, who has a million starts to his name, feels like he's been at A&M for 10 years now, did not play well again. His time at A&M has been, really, to me, just mediocre. They did not play as well as they should. Isaiah Spiller played relatively well, but the passing game, nowhere near as good as it should have been. I know you could say it was the weather, the heavy rain they faced. But good quarterbacks, experienced quarterbacks like that, have to find a way to move the ball. A&M did not look great. There's still work to be done, but regardless, the Aggies did improve to 6-1, and they still keep their college football playoff hopes alive. It'll be interesting to see where they fall in the next set of rankings. Interesting to see where they fall in that. Probably 5th, maybe they drop 1 to 6. But the Aggies still are a dark horse, still have that chance to make that college football playoff. Just depends on how everybody else fares. But the Aggies surviving LSU, I would say, by 13 in College Station. A win is a win. It just certainly was not pretty. And then finally, guys, I want to get a couple honorable mentions. We don't have them up here on the board. Usually we do teams trending up and trending down. Honorable mention to Rutgers real quick. How about the Scarlet Knights going on the road and taking down Purdue 37-30? I mean, what Greg Schiano has done in such a very short amount of time is unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. He got that week 1 win over Michigan State. Last week against Michigan, that triple overtime thriller, they fell to the Wolverines. But that showed to me how much and how far this team has come. They now go on the road and take down a decent Purdue team by 7 on the road. They hung with Indiana. They dropped, 27 points on Ohio State. This team is going places with Greg Schiano. Again, the job that he has done in such a short amount of time, and looking at where Rutgers is now, I know it's only 2 wins. But I know the Scarlet Knights would have killed for that last year. The year before that, they are trending in the right direction. To an unbelievable performance by Rutgers. Definitely deserves some praise. Ole Miss, they deserve some praise. Lane Kiffin winning his first ever Egg Bowl, defeating Mississippi State 31-24. They led 21-7. Mississippi State tried to rally late, couldn't do it. So I would say right there, our first classic matchup between Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach, and hopefully there will be many more to come between those two offensive gurus and certainly very fun coaching characters. 2 more here. UCLA taking down Arizona 27-10, I believe it was. The Bruins, remember how bad they were last year? The year before that? maybe they're starting to turn a corner now under Chip Kelly. And again, I get that it was just Arizona they defeated. But remember, UCLA hung with Oregon last week, only falling by 3. They nearly beat Colorado a few weeks ago in that season opener. Colorado, now a 3-0 team. So UCLA, they're not quite there yet. They're not quite ready to contend with the Pac-12 elite, but they've racked up a few conference wins now. They're certainly trending in the right direction. They're certainly a lot more competitive than they've been in years past. Maybe enough to save Chip Kelly's job, at least for another year. And then finally, a big shout out, Scott, you're going to love it, Baylor. How about Baylor snapping their 5-game losing skid? A very gutsy performance, a great comeback victory for the Bears, beating Kansas State 32-31 down in Waco. You know, Kansas State, they're a team that's certainly on the decline. We had them on our teams trending down not too long ago. Baylor, they were trending down not too long ago either. They needed this win at home. It didn't look like they were going to get it, but the defense held strong. Charlie Brewer came through clutch, and they kicked a game-winning field goal as time expired to get that 1-point win over Chris Kleiman and the Wildcats, a team that had so much promise just a few weeks ago. Injuries and certainly a tough schedule kind of derailed their season. But Baylor, Dave Aranda, back on the winning track, back on the winning side of things, and hopefully they'll be able to rack up maybe 1 or 2 more before the postseason. Remember, everybody is eligible for the postseason this year. It'll be very interesting to see how teams are selected going forward. So guys, there you have it, our Week 13 recap. Some great moments, historic moments. Jamar Jefferson, Jaret Patterson, Sarah Fuller. To me, those are the 3 big names you need to know and to take away from this historic weekend of college football. NFL, Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, it was lackluster. It was boring. It wasn't exciting. Once again, proving college football, in my opinion, just a tad bit superior, providing all the fireworks, the excitement, and the historic moments that we needed. We still have 2 more weeks left, guys. We still have about 2 weeks left before we start hitting conference championship games. The season almost feels like it's been extended due to COVID-19, all these postponements and cancellations and late starts by some teams and conferences. So there's still a lot of football left to be played. We're certainly seeing some separation from some teams, but there's still a lot of madness left. So make sure you don't go anywhere. We're going to have you covered every step of the way. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert. A little bit of a shorter Week 13 recap. We're going to try to keep it that way. Again, timestamps down in the description. Make sure you go check it out. And check out everything else down in that description too. Our expert picks. Still one of the best records in the country, guys. Still one of the best records in the country. Sign up for those. It's a year-long subscription. Our Patreon account, our newsletter, our Bet Now promo code, all of those things down in the description for guys like you, all of you subscribers. Everything down there is for you and is for you if you love college football. I promise it's going to benefit you some way, somehow. So make sure to go check that out down in the description. And stay tuned right here on the channel. We've got our Week 14 Top 25, GE Top 25 coming your way tomorrow, right before the committee releases their rankings on Tuesday. We'll have Week 14 predictions, Game of the Week analysis, and a live stream somewhere in there. We'll keep you updated with that on YouTube posts and on Twitter. So you certainly won't want to miss that as we hopefully are able to break down the committee's rankings that will hopefully be better than they were just last week. So much more content coming your way. The college football season still has a lot left to be played, and we are looking forward to every minute of it. So thank you so much again, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all had a great weekend. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.